Okay, let's unpack this. We've got a stack of sources today that, I mean, they really feel like a high-definition snapshot of South Korea's near future,
hmm
but it's a future that seems to be defined by two vastly different speeds of change.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. We're looking at these massive core themes that are defining the national strategy right now.
Right.
On one hand, you have these, proactive, really globally strategic shifts, how Korea is trying to position itself as an AI and energy powerhouse.
And overhauling its entire domestic finance system.
Exactly, to create what some call the mother's milk of innovation venture capital. But then on the other hand, you see these painful domestic realities.
Like the slow pivot away from coal and this
Yeah,
this really critical structural decay in higher education.
caused by the demographic shifts everyone knows about.
So the thread connecting all of this, it seems to be preparation for a future that's, well, it's already here. Some of it's aggressive, some is just painfully slow. So for you, our listener, what's the mission as we navigate all this material?
The mission is to understand the specific, the actionable mechanisms that are driving this change. We want to give you immediate leverage by moving past the headlines and really focusing on the concrete regulatory tweaks, the huge financial numbers, and the political bottlenecks that are either speeding things up or
Or stalling them completely.
precisely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's start with the money. The long-awaited first comprehensive investment account, the IMA products, are finally launching next month.
Yeah, 8 years after the system was first introduced back in 2017.
8 years. So what exactly is IMA and why is the financial world buzzing about it?
Well, you could think of IMA as a truly disruptive financial vehicle. It lets the largest financial investment businesses,
So we're talking the big ones with capital over 8 trillion won.
the absolute biggest players, yes, it lets them manage client deposits. But the feature that makes it so disruptive is a crucial obligation that the firm itself bears the risk for principal repayment.
They guarantee the initial investment.
Guaranteed.
That guarantee it's hugely attractive, especially for investors looking for security. But wait, if the firm guarantees the principal, doesn't that incentivize them to take less risk?
Mm.
How does the regulation stop them from just playing it safe and ensure this money actually flows into high-risk, high-reward ventures?
That is the core conflict,
Hmm?
and the regulation basically forces the outcome. While they guarantee the principal, they are obligated to give customers a minimum 3% return above that principal.
Yeah.
But the real genius of the regulation or burden, depending on who you ask,
Right.
is the mandate on the firm itself. They must commit a mandatory 25% of the total funds raised through IMA directly to venture capital investments.
So it's a two-pronged strategy. You give retail investors security to pull money away from, say, real estate,
Mm-hmm.
and then you legally force the financial institution to act as a venture capital supplier.
Precisely. It's designed to make sure the market liquidity is channeled toward high-growth tech and innovation
Yeah.
that traditionally struggles to get financing from conservative banks.
Mhm.
It's the state engineering an ecosystem.
And the scale is just staggering. We know the FSC designated Korea Investment and Securities and Mirai Asset Securities as the first operators. Give us a sense of the sheer volume of capital we're talking about here.
The potential influx is enormous. Projections show Mirai Asset could raise an additional 20.6 trillion won, and Korea Investment Securities about 17.3 trillion won.
So combined, that's nearly 38 trillion won, over 27 billion US dollars.
Flowing through just two firms with this new mechanism.
That's not just a budget, that's a whole new tier of the venture ecosystem being created practically overnight. And if we apply that mandatory 25% rule, what does that mean for the VC market by 2028?
By 2028, their combined required commitment to venture capital reaches over 16.7 trillion won. I mean, that volume of forced investment fundamentally alters the dynamics for funding startups. The system has to mature really, really fast to absorb that kind of capital.
I also see the sources mention a critical rule about how they operate. They can raise capital up to 300% of their equity. What's the significance of that leverage allowance?
That 300% rule, it signals a massive regulatory shift, a real degree of calculated risk tolerance from the government.
More than a traditional bank would have.
Oh, much more. By allowing these firms such high leverage, the state is basically telling them to be aggressive, to maximize the velocity of capital. It really reinforces the idea that these tools are for high-impact growth, even if it adds more systemic risk.
And to reinforce that innovation push, the government also strategically adjusted what these firms can even invest in.
Correct. The investment scope has been broadened to include things like National Growth Fund's Advanced Strategy Business Fund, and this is important, business development companies, or BDCs.
BDCs are often mentioned. What role do they play here exactly?
So BDCs are basically non-bank entities that invest in and sometimes operate smaller, middle-market private companies.
Okay.
They're crucial because they bridge that funding gap between a tiny startup and a huge IPO. By including them, it just makes it easier for the IMA firms to meet that 25% mandate.
And at the same time, they tried to stamp out old habits.
Absolutely. The hammer fall on real estate. The limit on real estate asset operation was cut drastically from 30% down to just 10%.
The message there is unambiguous.
Crystal clear. This new capital is for corporate innovation, not property speculation.
So, moving from that domestic capital to global strategy, we have the recent high-level business roundtable between South Korea and the UAE. What was the central message there to solidify that partnership?
The core theme was all about synergy. Synergy in future growth engines centered on AI and advanced industries. The context is the UAE's really ambitious goal of becoming a global AI hub by 2031.
And Korea's pitch is that it's the perfect partner.
The most reliable, high-trust partner. President Lee stressed Korea's strengths in HBM chips, core semiconductor tech, and EPC, the engineering and construction capabilities to actually build out the infrastructure.
That partnership sounds incredibly focused. The UAE needs the AI ecosystem built, and Korea has the high-tech parts and the know-how to build the massive data centers. Beyond that AI supply chain, what other pillars are part of this collaboration?
There are two other key pillars, both focused on long-term sustainability: clean energy and defense, which includes nuclear power.
Let's touch on the energy side first.
They're targeting a joint achievement of 2050 carbon neutrality. This means combining the UAE's massive solar potential, their natural advantage, with Korea's advanced battery and energy storage tech.
It's an ideal match.
A perfect match. UAE generates the clean power. Korea provides the technology to store it and manage it efficiently.
And the defense relationship seems to be deepening as well.
It is. UAE Minister Tani Al-Zayudi specifically brought up the need for Korea's expertise in these huge, high-trust projects, and he referenced the successful completion of the Baraka nuclear power plant.
So this signals a long-term commitment. It's not just about one-off trade deals.
Exactly. This is about critical national infrastructure.
And stepping back, this cooperation really turns the government's prior goals into concrete plans.
It does. That prior projection of $35 billion in economic results from cooperation in AI and defense.
About 50 trillion won.
Right. Now it has real implementation plans laid out. There are signed agreements involving nuclear, energy, and securing those semiconductor supply chains needed for the huge, power-hungry AI data centers.
That global push for clean energy brings us right back to a domestic challenge: the coal phase-out. Korea is aiming for a 2040 phase-out, but one source highlights a surprisingly clever way to minimize the regional economic damage. What's the strategy for that stranded infrastructure?
Well, this raises a really important question. How do you manage this transition while preserving valuable, sunk infrastructure costs?
Which can be billions of dollars.
Easily. Vice Minister Lee Ho-hyan confirmed the 2040 phase-out goal, which aligns Korea with the Powering Past Coal Alliance.
So the timeline is firm. What's the clever bit about the sites themselves?
The big idea is not demolition, it's repurposing. The key asset isn't the coal boiler, it's the high-capacity, high-voltage power grid infrastructure that's already built and connected to that specific site.
And why is that grid connection so valuable right now, especially to the tech world?
The vice minister cited a very specific trend among U.S. big tech companies. They're buying up old coal plants.
Not to burn coal, obviously.
Yeah, not at all. They want to leverage the existing grid connections. In developed countries, getting the permits and land and actually building new high-voltage connections is often the single most expensive and time-consuming part of launching a new data center or battery farm.
So these old coal plant sites become prime real estate for the clean energy transition. You just skip those massive infrastructure hurdles.
Precisely. The proposed solution is for Korea to proactively link that retired infrastructure with energy storage systems or renewables, or even convert them into large-scale hydrogen production bases. This minimizes new costs, and, this is critical, it provides a clean energy anchor to revive the regional economies that depended on those plants.
We've covered fresh capital and infrastructure solutions for the future. Now we have to shift to what is maybe the deepest structural problem: the education crisis from demographic decline. Our sources call it the zombie university dilemma.
What's fascinating here is just the sheer institutional inertia, the political resistance to letting things fail. We're looking at universities labeled as highly deficient, institutions that have faced restrictions on government aid and student loans for years because of low enrollment and, being financially unstable.
Let's get to the numbers because they are genuinely shocking. They really illustrate the paralysis. How few of these failing schools are actually closing.
Out of 10 universities that had student loan support restricted for 6 or more years over the last decade,
6 or more years.
only one school was actually shut down.
One. So you're saying institutions that are designated as deeply troubled for more than half a dozen years have a 90% survival rate.
A 90% survival rate.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And there are even more extreme cases than that.
Oh, yes. We find 3 universities that face these loan restrictions for 10 consecutive years.
Every single year.
Every single year for a decade. They're essentially operating as zombie universities.
Yeah.
They're financially insolvent, but they're sustained by political and regional pressures.
Because closing them means losing local jobs.
Local jobs, regional identity, the whole thing.
Wow. The implication is severe. These schools consume national resources, they dilute academic quality, and they potentially waste young people's time and money.
That's the ultimate trade-off. The inability to close them efficiently prevents resources from flowing to healthier institutions that could actually prepare the country for that AI future we just discussed.
It's harming human capital development.
Fundamentally. And that's why experts are strongly calling for this new Private University Structure Improvement Act to have its regulations drafted with maximum detail and rigor. They argue that only really stringent implementation can facilitate the orderly retreat of these underperforming schools.
What an incredibly dense and contradictory set of national priorities. We've seen Korea launch massive new financial tools like the IMA to fund innovation, strategically position itself as a key global partner in AI and energy.
And find creative ways to recycle aging infrastructure.
And yet, the nation still struggles with these deeply entrenched structural issues like zombie universities.
The dichotomy is stark. If you looked at the overarching theme, it's all about strategic resource allocation. The move toward IMA shows a willingness to use regulatory force to push financial capital into high-growth areas, to accept that risk.
Love that.
But the inability to close failing educational enterprises shows that institutional rigidity is still a major, major challenge whenever the solution involves domestic hardship and local political backlash.
That tension. Decisive action on financial capital, but paralyzed action on human capital infrastructure, that is defining the current macro landscape. For you, our listener, understanding this tension provides a crucial lens for evaluating government policy and, frankly, investment opportunities in the years to come.
Absolutely. The tension between proactive growth funding and structural decay is, I would argue, the defining challenge for South Korea in the next decade.
Before we go, here's a final provocative thought for you to consider. If the goal of the new IMA structure is to shift trillions of won into high-risk, high-reward ventures by forcing financial institutions to commit capital, what equivalent non-negotiable regulatory mechanism, maybe a fixed threshold for mandatory closure, could be devised to ensure the quality and necessary consolidation of Korea's higher education system? How do you guarantee better returns on the national investment in human capital? Think about that tension until our next deep dive.